Melissa Jarboe is no stranger to our show, and she joins us right here again. Melissa, how are you doing?
Very good, Chris. Thank you.
You know, you came on our show and you were talking about the Veterans Day Parade, which Topeka had never seen one before. And you took on this task of making sure that we had one, and I want you to give us an update. Tell us how that went.
Well, it went wonderful. We started November 11th. It was a Monday, and it was beautiful, 60 degrees. And we were able to wrap up a parade that brought nearly 10,000 people to downtown Topeka. We had 2,500 participants, and we finally welcomed home the Topeka veterans. And it was a huge honor for our community and, of course, for us as the Military Veteran Project to accomplish that.
And of course, you know, you are a Gold Star wife. Your husband, Jamie, passed away in the war. He lost his life in Afghanistan. And so this has inspired you to take on an entirely new direction in life. Tell us about what you have decided to do with this, to turn this into a really, truly positive story.
Well, you know, after Jamie was wounded, I kind of learned a lot of things about the military. And what I found out is, as an American, I was not doing enough. I felt like I was not doing my American duty. You know, we all have freedoms, and I just wasn't using them freely. So I kind of chose, after Jamie passed away, he gave me one final wish, and that was to care for his fellow service members. And I spent months not knowing what that meant until I started reaching out and speaking to some veterans, and then also active duty service members. And I started remembering the gap between the military and the civilian communities, and we kind of want to bridge that gap. But also what we want to do is we don't want to forget about our veterans, our Vietnam veterans, Korean veterans, and World War II veterans who paved the way for America to live freely today. And so the Military Veteran Project, we do that. We advocate, educate, and honor our military veterans and their families.
And speaking about that disconnect between civilians and military life, you recently recruited me to go on something, and you know, I really wasn't sure what I was going to be getting into. And let me just tell you, it was really amazing. We spent a couple of days at Fort Riley, and we got to meet some really amazing guys and gals over there, and from military wives to people serving in the military, and just heard some incredible stories. I got an education.
Yes.
So you want to kind of recap our experience there?
I would love to. We actually went out to go and pay honors and respects to a 1st Infantry Division soldier who lost his life. So we attended his memorial, and we also wanted to show support for his family. And that was a big thing for me personally, because I was actually that wife at Jamie's memorial 2 years prior. And so for me to kind of be there, you know, to see it, and then for you as a civilian to kind of come into the military world, you learned what the roll call was. And the roll call is something I think any civilian ever hears that it just gives you the chills. It's reality. We also were able to attend change of command ceremony and meet some of the higher ranking officials at Fort Riley. And then we were able to go through and meet some of those families and hear their stories and listen to them about what they need from the civilian community.
And really the tradition behind each thing that we saw was really eye-opening to me, because it really is beautiful. And I say this because obviously when you lose someone and you're going to a funeral, that's not it, but the way that it happened, the way that people paid honor was just, it's something I'd never seen before. You know, it was not your typical memorial ceremony, or not your typical promotional party. Like it was really, I can't really even put it into words.
Almost humbling.
Yeah,
it was humbling.
I really felt special because I was there to be able to share in that with all of those folks, and it really meant a lot.
Yes. You know, to me, as a civilian, now you can understand what ignites my passion. Why each day I wake up and I choose to go do this, and I choose to go out and support our military. I choose to go out and say thank you, and not just use words as a debt of gratitude, but I'm going to put my words into action, and I'm going to show our military veterans what thank you means from our community. And
we had a lot of opportunities to talk while we were on this trip, and you were telling me about some of the stories that the Military Veteran Project has been working on, and some of the magic that you're making for some of these soldiers and their families. Give us a couple examples of that.
Wow, that's a lot. You know, there's so many different angles, so many different advocacy or educational things we've done. You know, I think I spoke to you about Kenton Gray, who was a soldier. He had came home in 2006, 2007. and he had developed some kind of very rare disease, and he was actually dying in the VA. And his mother reached out to us, and we were trying to assist him with his medical needs. Unfortunately, we reached Kenton too late, and he ended up passing away, January 2012, and that was really hard. That was one of the hardest cases I think we dealt with. I did go down to Texas. I actually met with a wounded warrior and his wife, and he's actually a double amputee. And the wife was kind of confused. It's really nerve-wracking to go into the military, but then to become a casualty of war, and then go into the wounded warrior world and try to understand as a civilian what's going on. And so we went down and we met with that family, and we helped educate the wife. And we also talked to the soldier to make sure he was in good standing, and to also make sure that his wounds were good, to make sure the protocol was being followed, and that he was aware of what his rights and what he should be doing as a soldier to keep carrying through and moving forward. We've had so many stories.
You get calls all the time.
Constantly.
You get emails and calls, and even while we were down there, it was like constantly coming in, and you were constantly moving and shaking, and really making some good things happen for people.
We were.
Yeah, and that's something that, advocacy for our veterans, and that's something that you guys are really doing a good job with.
We're very, we're making that big push, and also I think educational for the civilian community to understand what our veterans are going through, and I think that's the biggest tie and the biggest point we're trying to make is advocate, educate, and honor our military veterans and their families.
It's one of the things, like on my Facebook when I got home, I said, if you see somebody in the military, thank them. If you see them in uniform, just thank them, because they're doing so much more than we can understand. We in the civilian world, really.
Exactly.
It's way above and beyond anything you'd ever even imagine. Especially some of the folks that we met. We got to talk to the Bakers.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the background with them.
So Staff Sergeant Anthony Baker and his wife Emily, a special military family. Actually, everybody should follow this family. This family is amazing. Staff Sergeant Baker was wounded back in 2011. He was hit by an RPG. He ended up going to Germany and then Berkshire Medical Center in Texas. And wouldn't you know it, this man is still serving our country today after being blown up, going through so many surgeries. And he's actually serving at 1st Infantry Division now, and he's getting ready for another deployment to Kuwait, so he just keeps going. And so we were able to talk to this family, and they were kind of educating us as far as what is it like to be a military family, and why do they choose to do it? Why does Staff Sergeant Baker choose, right now as we speak, he's in a cold field on the range with his soldiers, educating them and training them about their upcoming deployment. We're sitting here in this nice cozy room. Everybody's in their nice cozy homes right now. Staff Sergeant Baker's outside, and his wife is home by herself, helping the children with their homework and making dinner alone. She's not a single woman. Her husband, she's married, but yet her husband is dedicated to the country. He serves, and so is she. So, they're a great family, and I think everybody should listen and hear their story.
And they will get the opportunity to do that here. We're going to show some of that interview with them coming up after the break. Thank you so much, Melissa. I really do appreciate that. We'll check in with you after the interview.
Very good, thanks.
I joined the Army in 2004 to serve my country overseas. I was prompted to join the military because most of my family members had actually served in the military in one of the other branches. I've been deployed 3 times, twice to Iraq and once to Afghanistan.
We met 2 weeks before he went to basic training, and then he was gone. And 6 months later, we were married. He was a month and a half later, he was deployed the first time to Iraq in OIF-3. As a military spouse, I have been through 3 deployments. It's long when they are deployed, but it's a good time to reset and focus on yourself. It's a whole different schedule, a schedule that we usually get used to and then have to readjust when the guys get back. When Anthony gets orders to deploy, it kind of starts off a whole thing of where you're going, how long you're going to be, what maybe the mission might be for that deployment. Then it's usually going through the course of FRG meetings, getting together, knowing our resources here, making sure everybody's aware of what's available. Then the squadron commander will speak and give a nice long speech about how the guys are ready, they're prepared. And then usually it's pretty soon after that the guys are packed up. It's a lot of long nights that the guys will be working before they leave initially. And then usually we'll sit there and we won't be in with the guys, but we'll probably be out in the driveway, just sitting there with the other wives talking. And then we eventually make our way home at whatever hour in the morning it is. And then it just kind of goes from there into basically day one is our routine just starts.
Deployment, like for me, before you deploy, is it's trying to get through the long days and long nights of getting ready to deploy. You know, going to the ranges, packing up all your stuff, making sure you have everything you need to deploy. Not only, you know, the stuff you're going to take with you to pack, you know, your uniforms and your gear and all that stuff. It's also the stuff you got to leave back here. All right, you got to make sure all your power of attorneys are right and ready so your spouse can take care of any of the legal matters or anything like that, paying your bills, car payments, all that stuff to be done. On top of that, on the unfortunate case something happens, make sure your will is in order. More of your power of attorneys is stuff for medical for my kids. You know, in the unfortunate accident, something would happen to my spouse. Somebody's got to be here to take care of my kids until I can get here. So, and then the biggest thing that I do before I deploy each time is I've written a letter. I've written a letter to my kids and to my wife, and if I don't come back, and it stays in a fireproof safe. So that way they'll have it. Nothing can happen to it. And then I've kept that letters every time when we come back. And then once we do deploy, it's kind of like her first month. It's trying to get into the routine. There's not a lot of communication between her and I. I haven't talked to her very much. You know, I was trying to get in the swing of things. That way I have the mindset of I can make it home. All right, that way I know what's going on over there, wherever I'm at, whatever I need to do.
The first month is usually the hardest month. Everything's still so new, but then after that, usually it calms down and gets into the swing of things. And then usually it'd be odd hours that we get to Skype or video chat or something. A lot of times the kids miss it just because of the hours there and the training or whatever they have going on.
And then once you get through that first month, you try and get in a routine of being able to talk to her. With my first 2 deployments to Iraq, you know, I was able to talk to her pretty regularly. With the last deployment to Afghanistan, the first few months were hard to talk to her. I didn't have a lot of time to call her. It was mainly emails for the first 2 or 3 months. And then I was able finally to get to talk to her every week and a half. You know, I'd be able to call her. And it was usually right in the morning when I woke up because it was about the time for her to go to bed. And that was kind of a routine that we had. But deployment is I try not to worry about what's going on back home because that's going to affect me over there in being able to get back home. So I try and let her handle everything that's physically possible that she can. I mean, my whole job over there is to get back home, do the mission and get back home.
Having my kids and having a schedule, having school for the kids, all that kind of stuff, just a set schedule helps just keep the days going because every day is Monday. No matter what day it is, if it's a holiday, it's a Monday. You don't get 4-day weekends. You don't get block leaves for going home for holidays unless I choose to pack up the kids and drive myself. Yes, I knew my husband was in a hostile environment there in Afghanistan. It was very rough. We had a lot of casualties, a lot of days where we wouldn't hear anything, which that's always good news, is when you're not hearing anything. But there was a lot more times where, you know, we were either prepping for memorial service or something to that effect, and it made life very stressful. Being here and dealing with the aftermath of widows and families, and in reality, and just helping them to start over and trying to let that reality get the best of you.
The area that I was at in Kandahar was like 18th century farmland out there. I mean, there was very little vehicles. They did a lot of stuff with carts and donkeys. They were the land over there was just a pain in the butt to move around in. I mean, there was grape rows everywhere. Grape rows are nothing more than mud walls that are built every 3 feet to hang grapes on and grow over there because that's their main crop. I mean, it was hot, it was cold, you name it, it happened. So, and then on top of that, just being in the heartland of the Taliban, you know, just made it even worse. A normal day in Afghanistan was you wake up about, I don't know, 7 o'clock in the morning, possibly 6:30 in the morning, try and get something to eat. Depending on what day it was, because the way we did it was we had rotations in our platoon. One day you were doing a mission, the next day you were, you know, pulling guard in the towers, and the other day you were working what we call our talk, our you know, where we have all of our radio equipment and all that stuff. So you weren't ever just sitting down doing nothing. So if you woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning and you were getting ready on a mission, you'd eat breakfast, you'd come back and you'd do all of your checks to make sure your soldiers had all the stuff they need, water, ammo, you know, anything that they really needed. If you were on guard, you just started your guard rotations. If you were running the radios, you were in there waiting for those guys to go on mission to talk to them, making sure everything was ready for them in case something had happened. So it wasn't like a, you know, you come back here in the rear, you know, off deployment and you get to work, you know, sometimes 9 to 5. It's there, you were working 24 hours a day no matter what. If you were asleep, you were still working. I mean, there was days that we would take 3 firefights a day. 3 times we would get engaged by the enemy, and it was just a really long deployment. I mean, my first patrol out there, I was shot at. I came into doing something, and the enemy decided they wanted to shoot at us that day, and that was my first deployment, or that was my first actual patrol outside the wire. The next 2 patrols outside the wire was the same thing. So the first 3 I had, I was shot at. And I knew right then and there, it was about to be a long year. And that's how it was for everybody. It was a long year, not only for me, but for everyone back home too. Spouses go through the same stuff. They go through stuff, but it's different for them, but it's still hard. I remember the day that I was wounded. I was actually in a local police station we had built, and we were spread pretty thin throughout the squadron, so we kind of had to help out with everyone. I was at a local police station, and we had just taken contact from one of the little villages. We were by it, and we got into a pretty good firefight. It probably lasted about 45 minutes. Right after that, you know, everything died down. I decided I was going to go get something to eat. I went into a Connex building, which is nothing more than a giant metal building. I took off my gear. I started making an MRE, and that's when a 82 millimeter recoilless rifle round shot over the wall and impacted right above the door of the building I was in. I was only standing about 5 feet from the door with my back to it. So all that shrapnel from the round plus the building entered into my back. And then I lost consciousness. I'm not really sure for how long. And the next thing I know, I was waking up, yelling for a medic, feeling really dazed and out of it. And then that's about all I remember.
The afternoon that I was notified, I was actually at a friend's house, and I received a phone call from the Rear D letting me know that my husband was injured. They read off the full report to me. Of course, a lot of it didn't make sense at the moment, so they reread it to me. About 15 minutes after that, I received a phone call from Fort Knox letting me know of everything that was going on, and they wanted to know my quickest route to the airport to be flown to Germany in case it was needed. After I received the phone call, I can't really remember any distinct thoughts. It was almost just like my brain turned to mashed potatoes, and I couldn't really focus. Like, I knew what was said and I knew what happened, but from there until I landed in Germany, I was pretty much numb by that point. The first time seeing him in the hospital, in the ICU and launch stool, it was I really can't wrap my head around it because I had seen him 2 weeks prior and he didn't even look the same. I actually asked the nurse, I'm like, that's not my husband, because I just saw him. He didn't look like that. That guy's messed up. Just the look on his face and the way his face looked just from being on so many medications, and it just wasn't him. Once I landed in Landstuhl, I was there for 3 days, and on the third day we flew back, and we actually landed in Walter Reed first, and we were down on the ground for quite a while. We had to let soldiers off there that were going to Walter Reed. And then it was finally about 11 o'clock that night that we landed in Texas at BAMC.
I spent 3 months in San Antonio. Once I got into the hospital, I spent 10 days in the hospital. So between being wounded and getting to BAMC through the hospital, I spent about 27 days in the hospital total. Once I got out of BAMC, I went to their Wounded Warrior program down there, or their Wounded Warrior unit down there, I should say. And I spent another 2.5 months trying to get out of there. I literally tried to get out of there. I couldn't stand it. I was glad to be being taken care of down there, but the problem was my unit was so close to coming home. They were so close to coming home, I needed to get home. I needed to get back so I could watch my guys get off the plane. Unfortunately, I missed that day by 1 day. I wrote my first will when I was 18, right before I deployed for the first time. The only piece of advice I could give to people that want to come in the Army today is be flexible. Things change all the time, and it changes for the better, it changes for the worse. Be flexible, and when you do get that call to go overseas, make the time the best time you have with your loved ones, whether it be your spouse, your kids, your mom, your dad, your family, whatever it is. Make the time the best time you'll ever have, because there are people that don't get to come back home and have that time anymore.
I got through the days after he was injured by taking care of him, making sure that his nurses were up and up on everything or whatever he needed, talking to close friends back here at Fort Riley, and communicating with a friend of mine that was taking care of my kids after his parents had flown down to Texas. You know, talking to them about school, making sure that they were still doing everything they were supposed to be doing. But mostly just, I filled my day with taking care of him in the hospital.
When I got back, after I finally was able to do a lot of stuff, I started volunteering at the Melissa Jarboe Foundation. He was actually somebody in my unit, and I had known him that had, got wounded and passed away, and I felt that it would be a great opportunity to give back to the community of not only veterans, but incoming soldiers, people that were coming into the military that were going to have to deal with the same stuff that we're dealing with now. So it was a chance to give back to them too.
One way I volunteered during the deployment was that me and another friend would get together and we would make care packages specifically for our guys' platoon, made out to each of them with toys and candy, just stupid little things to help them just be kids. And I also volunteered with our FRG and helped families and wives here with day-to-day information of what was going on. I volunteered a few times for the JJF. I always get the, I couldn't do it. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't choose another life. I wouldn't give it up. I would do it all over again.
And now it's, in my mind, my obligation to be able to continue that service. And then when you do deploy, it's the guys to your left and your right, the brothers and your sisters to your left and your right that you have to take care of in order not only to get yourself home, but to help them get home also, especially with the new soldiers coming in. They don't have the experiences that a lot of us have had after 2, 3, 4 deployments. So it's our job to help them get home back to their families so they can become the future soldiers of America, to lead them into the 21st and 22nd century. That's why I do it.
What an incredible story of the Bakers. Just great to meet those folks. And folks, you should be supporting our troops. So again, say thank you the next time you see somebody in uniform and tell them that you really do support what they're doing for us here at home so that we don't have to worry about the things that they're worrying about, right?
Exactly.
And also speaking about this, you're running the foundation here out of Topeka.
That's correct.
And we're really trying to make things happen for folks in this area, and just make some really wonderful things happen.
Right.
And so we're going to challenge the folks out there that if you have some kind of service or something that you can offer to the military veterans, their families here, contact these guys right here, and we'll put their information right on the screen. You can go to this website right here and get in touch with Melissa, because we want to do some magic for these guys, and that's exactly what you're dedicated to doing, right?
Exactly. We're 100% volunteer-led. So, you're talking about 100% of any donations or any services go right to the veteran in need. And I think that's a great thing to have, especially when you're a charity. We just spoke to Applehands Roofing today, and they actually said they want to get involved. They want to help their community. Matt Applehands, his father Ted, is actually a veteran. So they want to give back to the community. And I think it's very important for the Topeka community. Today we can give back, and I challenge you all to do the same. So we'll be coming to visit most of our Topeka people and saying hello and challenging them to do so.
If you have a business, you want to offer something, let them know, because they'll use it to make some good magic happen for some folks who truly deserve it. So folks, until next week, keep supporting our troops and definitely keep talking about Topeka.